near mint condition, the home of collected edition.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves.
By Odin's beard, it is finally here! The new printing of Thor by Walter Simonson Omnibus from Marvel Comics. Join me, the Uncanny Omar, for your first look at this book. Before going any further, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on June 11th or 12th, depending on where you get your books. So speaking of direct market, book market, what we're looking at here is the direct market cover, the one that is supplied by Walter Simonson. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover, of course also supplied by Walter Simonson. But that particular cover features Thor and Balder the Brave. And the other thing to note is that the spines are different on the direct market and the book market cover. But everything underneath the dust jacket is the same, so we are gonna shift the focus back to this. So this is the direct market cover. I love this cover, so much so that it's also the cover that I chose for my original printing from 2011. Now, while I have the book here with the dust jacket, let's go ahead and show you where I put it in my bookshelf. So this is the reading order of Thor in omnibus format. I am missing Volume 2, so yeah, I also voted for that Silver Age Volume 2. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get it. But this is the way it looks now. So this book has had two previous printings. This one here, the original printing from the 2011, and then in 2017 there was a reprint. But that came and went, and here we are in 2024 with the latest printing. Interesting enough, it's brought it back home because this is printed at the Donnelly printer, just like the original printing. So let's compare the sizes of the books. This is significantly thicker. This is slimmer right there. And that's not just the paper stock. It also has something to do with the binding, which I'll go over a little bit here. The Mighty Thor Marvel Omnibus logo looking like the new ones here. This is the classic look. And then that image right there of Thor with his beard, and there's an actual reason why he sports a beard. And then, oh, oh my gosh, I love that image. That is from issue 337, the very first Walter Simonson issue, and of course the very first appearance of Beta Ray Bill. And here is the font up here, looking, actually it feels like, or looks like rather, that they're using the same font, just a little bit smaller. And then what it collects, rated T, and I think this is just rated A. The retail price of this one here, the original printing, was $125. The new printing is $125 as well. I really thought it was going to be $150. Let me double check that. My old eyes. Oh, $125. Oh, wow. It's a big book. Okay. And I remember when this came out in 2011, I was like, $125? Oh man, when most of them were like $65 to $75 and $100, $125. I was like, but it's Walter Simonson on Thor, I have to get it. Now, underneath the dust jackets, let's go ahead and take a look, because over here we're going to have the classic look, right? This is the Marvel Masterworks style that they were doing. With Mjolnir down there, Marvel Omnibus, Mighty Thor, nothing on the back, and the faux leather. Now, in the new printing, before we look at it, let's look at the flaps right here. It was a time of magic. And then the creators right here, Walter Simonson and Sal Buscema. You have Mjolnir on the left and Stormbreaker on the right-hand side. And that's practically what the flaps look like in the original printing. Okay, this image. Look at the amount of manliness in this image. Asgardian gods with guns. This is so badass. This is from Marvel Age Annual number 2. It's a pinup. And it's just, yes, the Asgardians fighting against a bunch of giants, and all of that will be explained when I talk about the book. So obviously underneath the dust jacket looks different. We're going to crack this book open. We're going to look at the artwork, and we're going to talk about the type of stories found in here and talk about what it collects. And then, of course, look at the build of it and then compare it to the original printing. All right, let's go ahead and crack this omnibus open. You have the black end sheets right here. Thor by Walter Simonson Omnibus, and then what it collects, Walter Simonson and Sal Buscema there. Throg, and then Thor Omnibus, the credits right here, writer, artist, and artist right there. The inkers, Terry Austin, Bob Wyzek, Al Milgram, Jeff Isherwood with Sal Buscema. I love that combination. The remastered coloring, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, Steve Olive and Ollie Optics 2.0, same people that did the Akira in color. And then the lettering, John Workman Jr. and Bob Pinaha, and the editors at the time, Mark Grunwald, Ralph Macchio. The cover art, of course, and then Thor, created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. Table of contents right here, including an introduction by the legendary Walter Simonson, talking about how lucky he was. I love that they have the picture of him and Wheezy right here. From that particular storyline and the ending, and how much he grew up and loved Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's Thor. As a matter of fact, it was the very first Marvel comic when he was in college that he picked up at a roommate, like some roommate had brought it. And we kick it off with probably one of the most iconic covers and one of the most amazing, most popular issues for Thor, and that is Thor 337. So this collects Thor 337 to 355, 357 to 369, 371 to 382, and then the Balder the Brave miniseries 1 through 4. The book has 1,192 pages and retails for $125. So this is how Walter Simonson decided to kick off his run of Thor, with some foreshadowing. And this foreshadowing has an amazing payoff. There's a lot of that going on here. And this is also during the time of Chris Claremont on Uncanny X-Men. Like, Marvel was just firing on all cylinders. You had Frank Miller's Daredevil. You had the Roger Stern Spider-Man run. And it feels like this is the definitive run for Thor for a lot of people. And whenever I do overviews, I tend to stay pretty much neutral, let people decide if they're interested in something. But talk about the stories and talk about the artwork and, of course, the build of the book. At the end of the day, everybody has a decision to make. Sometimes it's very difficult to talk about books like this. And, oh my gosh, just last week, Fantastic Four by Mark Waid, because that's my favorite Fantastic Four run. Or this is my favorite Thor run. It is amazing. I absolutely love what he did. So there are a lot of elements that Walter Simonson brought to his run here. And what to get out of this is that he finds this beautiful balance of not taking the stories too seriously and then having a big dramatic effect. I mean, it's like talking about when Thor turns into a frog. If you think about that, that is ridiculous. Can you imagine that happening these days? I know the character has come back, and we've seen him in Pet Avengers and Donny Cates Thor. But if that were to happen these days, people would lose their minds, especially on social media. What's going on? Marvel and the writers have lost their damn mind. But back then, it was so crazy, and it worked, and it had a dramatic effect. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a few. My gosh, let's begin with where it all starts, with the introduction of this new character named Beta Ray Bill, who is an alien. He's a Corbinite, and his people have been slaughtered. So he has been sent out on a mission to try to find the Destroyer and to try to acquire help. And one of the things that happens right off the bat in the first issue, written by Walter Simonson and drawn by Walter Simonson, is this big fight between Beta Ray Bill and Thor. Now, it's very, very important to note that during this time, Thor is also using his Donald Blake persona. He'd been using it for a long time. When the staff hits the ground, he turns into Thor. And that was something of, his father, long before this, it was a big retcon. His father was trying to teach him humility. All right, in the first story arc, Beta Ray Bill is able to pick up Mjolnir, the staff, on accident, and hit it, and becomes worthy of picking up Mjolnir. That hasn't happened, outside of a what-if comic, in the chronological reading order of Thor. That never happened. So, they get into a big fight. he's back as Donald Blake. He's lost his power. What are we going to do? Eventually, they do come together, and he learns everything about this particular hero, Beta Ray Bill, and how much he has sacrificed, including having his body just changed physically because they were trying to make him into this ultimate weapon. And they both fight for Mjolnir over who gets to own Mjolnir, who gets to become Thor. And it's a really interesting story. But like I said, Thor's father, Odin, sees how much of a hero he is. And I love the fact that he calls him the son I always wanted. Poor Loki. Loki has something big in this particular omnibus too. I mean, what is a Thor story without Loki anyway? And again, foreshadowing this right here, the making of the Twilight Sword. And of course, the coming of something big, Ragnarok. I love the relationship between Lady Sif and Beta Ray Bill. It's almost like he's crushing on her, but he has to pull back a little because he's like, oh, I'm an ugly, mutilated creature from my world. We're not even the same. And, oh, it's wonderful. I love it. So what ends up happening, and this isn't that big of a spoiler, but this kind of gives you an idea of why it makes this the definitive run for a lot of people. What ends up happening is Odin decides, okay, Beta Ray Bill is worthy of picking up Mjolnir. I'm going to make him his own hammer. And he makes him, well, not him physically, but, the dwarf, makes him the Stormbreaker. And then, Thor's like, wait a minute. If he turns into himself, right, he can be Beta Ray Bill and then turn back to Stormbreaker. What about the whole Donald Blake and Thor thing? So Odin's like, yeah, forget it. You've learned your lesson. Guess what? You don't ever need to turn into Donald Blake. You're Thor, Odin's son from now on. And that's how that happens. Like within the first story arc, within the first 3 issues, he's retconning things that were like, wait, what? There's no more persona. So when people come and read Thor nowadays, this is exactly what you get. You get this Thor, Odin's son, and that's it. There is no Donald Blake. I mean, people have tried to bring him back, but whatever. And you have Beta Ray Bill being able to turn into his regular self, and then when he wields Stormbreaker, that's when he turns into the Corbinite with the horse face. Now, another thing that Walter Simonson does is find this beautiful balance of Asgardian adventure, so sword and fantasy, dragons and everything. Midgard, so the adventures on Earth, and then there's cosmic side of things. It's like he took everything that you loved about Thor before he took over the run, whether it was Roy Thomas or Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and put it all together into one amazing epic story. So when Thor comes back to Earth, Nick Fury's like, hey, wait a minute, you need a secret identity. You can't just go back out there. So he gives him these ridiculous glasses, and they even make fun of the fact that it's like Superman. He's like, I don't know, it works for that one guy. He's like, hey, by the way, we got some reporters out there. And Thor bumps into somebody named Clark. That's a reporter. And Clark is like, wait a minute. That guy with glasses, he's not fooling anybody. I've seen him somewhere. And then he's like, no, never mind. It can't be. Now, we may not have the Donald Blake persona, but we still need Thor to be here in Midgard and keeping it safe. So he needs a secret identity. So he comes up with the name Jarlson Sigurd. So there we go. He wants to be a construction worker. Again, foreshadowing the coming of something big. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second without going too much into spoilers. The supporting cast is what makes this book amazing. We have this new lady, Melody, that is in Jarlson's life. Of course, Thor's life. He takes a liking to her. Asgard's dealing with its own drama. We have the return of Balder the Brave, Carnilla, and all these characters. And of course, Loki's still there too. And even Loki has his own love issues with this lady named Lorelei, who may have ties to the Enchantress. So Thor here on Earth has to fight a bunch of villains, including this dragon. And, this is how the world sees him. And building a relationship with Melody right here. And then we get the oncoming doom, this thing that has been setting up. We have the first appearance of Malekith right here. I think it's in issue 344, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this issue right here is the first appearance of Malekith. If you've watched the movie, this character is a lot better than the movie version. No offense to the Doctor, Christopher Eccleston. but it is the character that you're going to see later on that played a huge part in the War of the Realms. And he comes here to Midgard, to pick a fight with Thor. Now, again, this is the oncoming doom that's coming. It is Ragnarok, and it is Surtur, and he has the Twilight Sword. And that's what Walter Simonson has been building up for since the very first issue that he did, issue 337. Now, if you're thinking, oh man, really? That's the big setup? This book is split up into 3 different parts. We still have this much to go through. And there's just so much that happens. That's just one of the long game things. And what probably a lot of people regard as like the best epic story. But for me, there's another one in here that I think is just perfect and amazing. I love it. By the way, the mapping of this book is perfection. Balder the Brave happens right in the middle of issue number 1, happens right in the middle of this one story that I love that I'll talk about here in a little bit when they go to hell, and I'll explain why. And then 2, 3, and 4 are packed together after that story arc is over. It is brilliantly mapped. I love when Omnis are mapped this way. So, Ragnarok is coming to Asgard. There's going to be some changes. There's going to be some team-ups. One of my favorite lines happens in this very storyline. You have the Avengers fighting for Asgard. You have pretty much everybody fighting for Asgard, including Loki. You have Beta Ray Bill. Loki, that's right. The treacherous brother is fighting for Asgard. And there's this amazing moment where father and sons pick up their weapons for Asgard, for Midgard, for myself. Oh, that's so badass. I love it. Because Ragnarok is not just going to destroy Asgard. Thor learns that Surtur has plans for Midgard too. That's Earth again. But it's so awesome. And then the outcome of this leaves a status quo change in the pages of Thor for a while. That puts Balder the Brave into a new status quo, if you will. And a lot of the Asgardians come to live here on Midgard. And Lady Sif is still kind of crushing on this Beta Ray Bill guy. And you're rooting for him. You're like, yeah, man, that's what it's about. Because, Thor's a good looking dude, but you got heart. And she knows it and she can see it. And this is Lorelei. Again, this is the relationship that Loki is building in Asgard. And the Enchantress knows about this. Now, one of the things that ends up happening through that storyline in the first arc with Ragnarok, let's see, trying to stay away from spoilers. So this is Balder the Brave number 1. Is that, okay, let's just say that Thor has decided that he needs to go to hell to get a bunch of souls back. You think it's completely unfair because of the new status quo that Hela has taken a bunch of souls to hell. So he builds an army, including Balder the Brave and including Scourge the Executioner. And goes and gets these souls back. And I promise I'm going to come back to this because this is probably one of my favorite moments of Thor. Now, there's a huge fight against Hela, and you're going to see a change, a physical change in Thor, but not before you see the Balder the Brave miniseries wrap up. So the story of the first issue, Balder the Brave, is mapped perfectly right along with the issue of Thor 371, where it's like, hey, we need some Asgardians to go to hell with us and get a bunch of souls back. And Balder's like, yeah, sure. And then issues 2, 3, and 4 of Balder the Brave, the miniseries, is the aftermath with him and Karnilla and dealing with that relationship going on. We have the appearance of Curse right here. Now, one of the things that you're probably noting is issue number 356. I haven't talked about that. Why is that missing? Oh, I need to talk about this issue. That's the story by Bob Harris and Jackson Guice. It features Hercules, and it kind of breaks up this momentum of this story that Walter Simonson has been building. Now, in issue 355, I do want to note a couple things. In issue 355, I think it's issue 355 if I'm not mistaken. Let's go back to that issue. Walter Simonson is writing and drawing these stories. But when we get to issue 355 right here, okay, I'm right. It is. Every once in a while I get lucky. Sal Buscema comes in as the guest artist. Now, Sal, our pal Sal, later on ends up taking over the art. Because Walter ends up leaving as the artist to go and work on X Factor with Louise Simonson. But I know people are like, oh man, that's so disappointing. But dude, Walter Simonson's art is solid. Sal Buscema's art is freaking solid too. I think both of them complement each other, and it's just great artists working together. Now, if you're wondering about issue 370, that was when Walter Simonson was running a little bit behind. So that one's actually written by Christopher Priest, even though he was James Owsley at the time, and drawn by Big John Buscema. But it is not in this collection because Walter Simonson didn't write it, nor did he draw it. So let's talk about issue 364, which is where something ridiculous like Loki turning Thor into a frog ends up being such a dramatic, amazing story that leads into one bad thing after another, like the coming of curse. Now, something happens with Thor physically where he has to grow a beard. And I would love the way that Walter Simonson handles that, like the way that he handles this disfigurement, if you will, using shadows and mask, and now he's having to hold a beard. Now, that's not the only physical thing that's changing with Thor. There is a reason why Thor, you're going to see later on, wears a different armor, and it's such a badass armor. So now Sal Buscema has become the ongoing artist on Thor. He was the one that did the art on the Balder the Brave. Peace on Earth. So this is Justice Peace, and yes, he's completely like Judge Dredd. Just judge, jury, and executioner. It's a couple of issues here that are part of the storyline. The most important thing to appear in the storyline, though, is the existence of the Time Variance Authority. And that later on, when Walter Simonson does the issues of the Fantastic Four, where he introduces Mobius, who's based on Mark Grunwald, that all ties into that particular story. And then, speaking of tying into a particular story, the Mutant Massacre tie-ins. That's right, Mutant Massacre is in here. Just the issues of Thor, where he's helping out the Morlocks and Angel in the tunnels. And again, big ties to what's happening to Thor in this overall arc. And then he has to fight a bunch of bad guys, his own bad guys from his past. But is it truly them or something else going on? Now, there is a reason why he has to have that armor. And actually, this is the issue with X Factor, isn't it? With Bobby? Yeah, with Loki's manipulating Bobby's powers with the ice giants. But anyway, there is a reason why Thor has to have this arc, or this particular armor. In this third story arc, so, you have the Ragnarok, you've got the second story arc in here, which I talked a little bit about, that whole thing in hell. And the third story arc, which has been building for a while, that features an amazing fight. And I will say, I'll have a little spoilers just to talk about those fights. So let's just skip talking about it. This is what ends up wrapping up the run. This is the third story arc. And the big bad in here I'll talk about after I talk about the extras in the back. And then we do a comparison. So let's just go ahead and talk about the extras in the back here. So we have your back matter right here with some artwork by Walter Simonson, house ads, and the little corner box images, because I'm sure you probably noticed that the covers are textless covers. It just tells you what issue you're on. More house ads and character designs right here. This is Thor and Balder the Brave covers with the trade dresses, or I guess trade dress. More character designs, just beautiful, beautiful artwork right here by Walter Simonson, who was just born to write these stories. And let me just say one more thing. If you're a fan of Thor by Walter Simonson, do yourself a favor and definitely check out, hey, it's that cover on board here. Ragnarok, published by IDW. I hope one day we get a big deluxe edition of that stuff. And some Tales of Asgard, which reprint that stuff. There are some backup stories here called Tales of Midgard. I thought that was nice. And it shows how the gods are adapting to living here on Earth. And this is the Ballad of Beta Ray Bill trade paperback introduction. And then the trade paperback of Beta Ray Bill by Walter Simonson. The Visionaries by Beta Ray Bill by Walter Simonson. And then the cover right here with the new colors for the standard edition in your end sheets. All right, so the colors. Yeah, let's talk about the colors. But first, there's that eye. 1,192 pages, printed at the Donnelly printer. sewn binding. Paper stock, as thick as Donley has been for the last couple of years. Now, let's talk about the colors, and then we'll talk about some spoiler stuff. The colors, yes, obviously the colors have been modernized. This is one of the, I think it's the only Marvel Omnibus that actually has modern colors on it. It's not as much as the modern colors in Swamp Thing, but I mean, it's obviously different. And I don't have my original comics anymore. I don't think I have. Oh, no, I do have the Mutant Massacre ones. I don't know where those are. But what I can do is kind of give you an idea of. Let's go. Actually, speaking of the Mutant Massacre, let's head there. Let's go here. So here's my Mutant Massacre Omnibus. And this is the way the colors look. Of course, you know, this isn't the colors from the comic, but as close to the comic as you're going to get compared to the colors here in this omnibus. Well, the first thing you're going to notice is that this actually has the trade dress of everything. The corner box, the logo there, the actual word bubbles. Now, let's look in here. You have the Steve-O-Live colors, and you have, I believe this is Max Sheely. Yeah, Max Sheely does the colors in the original one here. But this kind of gives you an idea of what the colors look like and what the modern colors are. Some people have issues with this because they want this in their omnibus. This is the third printing, and I knew they weren't going to change the files. I know some people love it. Even people that, you know, read it when they were kids, they love it. And I know Walter Simonson is a big fan of the colors. He's the one that approved it. But again, this is probably the way you remembered it if you don't have this omnibus, and this is the new colors here. Me personally, I love the colors. I think they add something extra. They're beautiful. This is the way I remember the stories, but there's just some beauty to this. I think Steve-O-Live does an amazing job, but Paul Mounts does too, of modernizing colors. And I know it's not for everybody. There's actual colorists out there that hate this. Like, whenever we modernize colors or artwork like this with new colors, and I get it, I respect it. But for me, it kind of works. And Sabretooth, you know, the way that I remember it, and then over here with the new colors. Even Artie looks a little bit different. This is the last page I'll show, and then we'll do a comparison to the original printing. So Artie even looks different. Like, the eyes are like orange instead of white. I don't know. I wish they had kept that white. I mean, there's a couple things I would have changed, but, you know, just a minor little gripe. All right, let's compare it to the original printing. All right, the internal comparison. We have the original printing on the left-hand side and the new printing on the right-hand side. Now, I just want to, again, show you how much bigger this first printing is than this one. Okay, so now, I think most people probably know that bigger doesn't necessarily mean the best. Please don't misquote me for that. I am talking about the damn books. All right. It's like they were still learning a lot of things when putting big omnis together back then. This is definitely thicker paper stock. 2011, 2024. Both printed at the exact same printer. One of the things you're probably going to notice, maybe it doesn't catch on film. Wait, there's no film in this camera. It's digital. Is that it's a little bit, and I mean just a tiny little bit, yellowing my paper stock here. This and Uncanny One have the same kind of paper, and I've noticed that my Uncanny One, maybe 2 years ago, started having just a little bit of a yellow tint to it. One of the things you're going to notice is the bleed through happening over here on the right. Not very much. I mean, it's minor bleed through. But you're also going to notice it here on the left-hand side in the original printing. Like I said, it's thicker paper, but still have some bleed through happening. Not as prominent as it is over here, but you can tell there is some bleed through happening on both of them. Now, what I need to... Yeah, see, as a matter of fact, honestly, the bleed through looks about the same over on this page. So it usually happens, you know, when it's just white or light colors. But it's not very much. It's very minimal, but I do want to be as thorough as possible. And before I go to the page where I want to show how the book lays over, one thing I don't want people to freak out about is that they think this book has a lot more pages than this. It's just because of the way they were doing things back then. They were starting the page count 8 pages in, starting it actually with the issue number. So over here is page number 9, page number 1. So don't think that this book over here has a lot more pages than this. This should have 8 more pages because of the way that they started numbering the pages. All right, let's turn to page 133. Now, the problem with these older books is this effect right here, that the book tries to shut itself on you, and that's because it was just so big. If you have Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1, the second printing, I think that's like one of the thickest one. And here's what the eye looks like, right? It's a big eye, but for a book like this, it doesn't do the trick of trying to keep itself open. You have to hold it down. And I never had an issue with that. There we go. Push it down enough, it'll stay down for a while. I never had an issue with that. It wasn't really until, here, let's go to that page. There we go. I started doing comparison videos that I thought, oh, maybe that was an issue and I just didn't mind. And it was just how we had books back then, whether it was Marvel or DC. We used to call these DC books the mouse traps. Marvel had them too. And it was just because of the paper stock being just heavy and, again, the build of the book. Now, it will happen again towards the back of the book, like this. You have to hold it down a little bit, and I think it'll eventually stay open. But I did want to compare just, how well this one lays compared to this one. There we go. 8 pages in. Same page count as this before. But that's it. That, as they say, is one of the greatest comics ever. Wait, no, don't go anywhere. I have a spoiler part. Yeah. Let's talk about why I love this book so much. Let's talk about 2 moments in spoiler mode as to why I love this series. All right, the big spoilers. Why do I love this so much? There's a few moments in here that just are best moments of Thor. So we went for Asgard, for Midgard, for myself. That's so badass. So badass. But how could I not talk about Scourge? Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's talk about this amazing issue. Issue 362 of Thor. Okay, so Scourge the Executioner was a character that had been in Thor for a long time. He's been with the Masters of Evil, hung around Enchantress, but he started getting a redeeming arc. Like he was getting to be that character that you learn to like. And when he teamed up with Thor to go to hell to get the souls back, I thought that was awesome. Oh my gosh. And then there's this moment where like the undead are coming and there's only one way to get away from these characters. Like this undead. I haven't even talked about Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder as goats here. But Thor's like, I will stay behind. Everybody else leave. Take the dead with you. Make sure you get them out of hell. And Baldur's like, yeah, oh, okay, Thor. But the Executioner knocks Thor out, like behind him. This is after the big fight when he's disfigured. And Scourge is like, I'll stay behind. Give me the weapons. Because he doesn't have his axe anymore. So he gets these 2 M16s and slays a bunch of the undead. But the undead never stop coming. He gives them enough time to leave hell. And oh my gosh, this moment. Manly eye sweat. It is so badass. Look at the way this is worded. It's beautiful poetry. They sing no songs in hell, nor do they celebrate heroes. For silent is that dismal realm and cheerless. But the story of the Jalburu and the god who defended it is whispered across the 9 worlds. And when a new arrival asks about the one whom even Hela bows her head, the answer's always the same. He stood alone on Jalburu, and that answer is enough. Damn, what a way to go. I get goosebumps even talking about this scene, man. This is comics. Damn, I love comics. This is so good. And I know people love Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, I do too. But no way in hell, with 1 L, did they do this justice. Oh, this was beautiful. Now, the other thing that I didn't want to spoil, so if you don't care about spoilers or you read this, is of course the big fight against not Fing Fang Foom, but Jormungand, the World Serpent. This issue right here of the Mighty Thor is so ahead of its time and so amazing. And please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was another comic that had done this in the past. So, how would you tell a story about Thor against a giant serpent that can wrap itself around the world? You do it in splash pages and spread pages. You do it where you don't show the entire body of the world serpent. And each page is a splash page as Thor is fighting a different part of the snake's body. How freaking awesome is that? Damn, do I love this book. Oh, that's so freaking amazing. I remember reading this as a kid, and I was like, oh my gosh. Now, I'm sure people at the time, and I'm sure it happened, they were like, man, that's messed up. I feel so cheated. Like, I feel like I just bought a little art book instead of, I'm not getting my, 75 cents at the time, I think. I'm not getting my money's worth. There should have been 8 panels, 9 panels. Come on. Man, I don't care. This is comics. This is so freaking awesome. Dude, that is top 5 favorite moments in Thor for me. I love that freaking story. And it wraps up, and then, of course, everything ends up wrapping up with the storyline in Thor. Oh, with the Destroyer armor. So they did borrow some of the stuff for the movie. But I love the last page of Walter Simonson's run here. Just ends up leaving in a happy ending, and the arm, he's still wearing the Asgardian armor right there because his bones are so brittle. That's why I didn't want to spoil that. Man, do I love this book. I guess that's it. That was the spoilery section, huh? I didn't even talk about Jane Foster. Like that story with Jane Foster where she's with her family and he has to protect her, and that's the whole time variance thing. Oh, man, so good. Epic storytelling, the build-up, and like I said, finding that balance of not taking it too seriously and having the dramatic effect. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors. BD Cosmos, the Canadian leader in graphic novels. They have a physical storefront in Montreal, Quebec, and their website, bdcosmos.com, offers 25% off your order of over $99 or more, and free shipping everywhere in Canada for every order of $200 or more.
Their shipping care is exceptional. Your books will stay cozy through the rough Canadian weather and arrive to you in near mint condition.
After checkout, let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way, and you'll be added to the monthly $25 gift card raffle. Entries are valid for new and returning customers.
Don't be afraid to call or email them. Ask them questions. Their staff is always happy to help guide you towards the right purchase. Visit their website, bdcosmos.com, for more. BD Cosmos, with rewards and raffles taking care of customers in Canada.
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus, and of course the comparison to my original printing. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.